All I'm saying is that it's pretty weird that he has suddenly developed an allergy to sunlight. What, so what? Now every day I have to get up before the sun rises just in order to get myself dressed? Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned for my weekend reading report. It's time for my weekend reading report. And some coffee. So this is the thrilling program where I talk about all the exciting things that I read during the previous week. So let's get into it. What fun stuff did I read this week? Okay, for my 500 book challenge, the challenge where I have to read 500 books that I own before I'll buy any new ones, I finished book number 121, and that is this one, Cormac MacArt, by Robert E. Howard, my favorite author of all time, Robert E. Howard. He wrote this book, which is published in the Robert E. Howard Library from Baen Books. This is from a fantastic series of books published by Baen Books in the 1990s. There was not much being published from Robert E. Howard during the 1990s. It was kind of a dark time for Robert E. Howard. But Baen Books came to the rescue with this fantastic series of mass market paperbacks. This was the very first one, Cormac MacArt. And I will read a bit from the back because it's awesome. Cormac MacArt, an Irishman descended from Colin Conan, carves a bloody track across the face of Arthur's Britain. At his side is Wulfhere, the Skull Splitter, a Dane as ready to turn his huge axe on demons as on humans. They stand back to back against the men, monarchs, and monsters of an age with ancient evil. An age dark with ancient evil. Excuse me, I'm not wearing my glasses. I could barely see, but that's okay. You get the idea. So, Viking Adventures, Cormac MacArt, not a well-known character as far as Robert E. Howard is concerned, mostly because Robert E. Howard did not write much about this character. So this is the shortest Robert E. Howard series. So short that David Drake actually wrote an extra story to put in here. As it says, all new story by David Drake. David Drake does the introduction. He writes a story, which is fairly lengthy. It's actually the first story in this book. The first story in this book is The Land Towards Sunset. And it's kind of long. Let me see. Yeah, it's 71 pages long. And so it takes up that much of the book. Because like I said, Robert E. Howard did not write too much about Cormac MacArt. But what he wrote was pretty great. The David Drake story is pretty good. It's a pretty good story. Has Cormac MacArt and Wulfhere encountering the last of the Atlantean civilization. They come across what's left of Atlantis. And that is the most fantastic story in this volume. These are basically, for the most part, with the exception of the last story by Robert E. Howard, these are historical adventure stories. But then you get to the last story and it's got monsters in them. Although in the last story is not finished. It's still pretty great though, even in its unfinished state. And the couple stories in here that are finished by Robert E. Howard. We've got Tigers of the Sea, which was not finished. That was a story that was finished by David Drake. He did a pretty good job. But then we've got Swords of the Northern Sea and The Night of the Wolf. And those were both by Robert E. Howard, and they're both really, really good. So this is good stuff. It's interesting that Baen decided to make this the first volume in the series. You would think they would have chosen Cull for that. The only reason I think they might have chosen this one is to put David Drake's name on it. Because David Drake at the time was a bigger name than Robert E. Howard. So maybe David Drake would help sell the initial volume of the series, and then this would get you hooked and you'd read the rest. Every book in this series is pretty great, and I'm going to reread them all. It had been a long time since I had read Cormac MacArt, so I had a good time with this book. This is really good. The Robert E. Howard stuff in this book is exceptional, and the David Drake stuff is pretty good, so it's a good read. Cormac MacArt. I will talk more about this on a future Robert E. Howard show, but excellent. So that was fun. Next, I'm reading a book that is lurking on my Kindle and has been lurking on my Kindle. I forgot all about it, and I was not planning on reading it this month until Grammaticus ruined my TBR. Grammaticus, who has a fantastic booktube channel, Grammaticus likes to ruin my TBRs. He just trashes them, and I end up reading books I hadn't planned on reading. And that happened now. So I'm reading, actually, the sequel to this book. This is a book I read, I believe it was last year. This is the Dracula Tape by Fred Saberhagen. This was a good book. But the sequel to this book, there are actually 10 books in this series. This is the only one that I have a physical copy of. The rest of them I have as ebooks. But I think there are 10 books in this series. He wrote a lot of Dracula. Actually, it's 11 because I think he wrote the novelization of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I'm 97% sure that Fred Saberhagen did the novelization to Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is a book that you would think wouldn't need a novelization. It's literally called Bram Stoker, whatever. Anyway, he wrote the novelization of that book, of that movie. And I have a copy of that. Again, I have an ebook copy of it because I've never been able to find a paperback copy of it. Anyway, I'm reading the sequel to this, which is the Holmes Dracula file. Since I have an ebook of it, I will put a magic picture up here so you can see the cover. And I don't know why I haven't read this, because it has Sherlock Holmes and Dracula in it, which, you know, two of my favorite characters. Why wouldn't I have read this book? Fred Saberhagen is really good. You would have thunk that I would have read this right away, but I didn't. And I know why, actually. And I'm going to talk about this in a future video. It's because it was on my Kindle. And my Kindle is the graveyard of forgotten ebooks, because I get ebooks and I just forget about them. They just lurk in this electronic space, and I forget I have them, and I forget what I have on Kindle. Whereas the physical books are literally staring me in the face all the time, and I remember those. But Grammaticus on his channel, he said he started to read this book, and I was thinking, yeah, I want to read that book too because of Grammaticus, and so now I'm reading it, and I'm about a quarter of the way through, and it's good. It's good. It's a pretty cool book, and it shouldn't take me too long to read this one. But I'm really enjoying it. It's about as fun as I expected it to be. I'm hoping that the rest of the books in this series are this entertaining. So we'll see. But I'm enjoying, so far, the Holmes Dracula file. I will talk more about this book next week. So that was that. Not the only thing I read this week. I also finished, in my 500 book challenge, book number 122. 122. I finally finished this. Thor Rune Quest. This is the 12th epic collection of Thor. So I am reading every issue of Thor from the first run of Thor, which started in the early 60s, ended in the mid-90s. And this epic collection contains stories from 1982 to 1983. And it has all the stories. This has the last few issues before Walt Simonson took over the book and began his incredible run on Thor. So Walt Simonson's run on Thor is legendary. It's literally legendary. I mean, if you know anything about comic books at all, you know that Walt Simonson's time on Thor was amazing. These in this are not amazing. They are very much not amazing. Some of the comic books in this collection are terrible. Some are okay, and that there are a few that are decent. In fact, the last few stories in here that are written by Alan Zelenitz, the stories themselves are not bad. The artwork, though, is nothing to write home about. There are a couple stories that are illustrated by Herb Trimpe, and the artwork in those stories is frankly atrocious. So I will defend Herb Trimpe. I actually liked Herb Trimpe's Hulk, and I've said nice things about Herb Trimpe's Hulk in the past. But he could be outright just terrible. He could just be a terrible, terrible artist. And, you know, I mean, just look at that. It's crap. It's crap. There's no other way to say it gently. But not all of the art in this comic book is crap. Some of it is okay. Some of it's okay. That's about the best I could say about it. It does have its moments, though. Dracula shows up. You know, Dracula, he's showing up all kinds of places in this weekend reading report. And he did show up in Thor. So we had a pretty cool... He drinks the blood of Sif and makes himself Super Dracula. And Thor gets the help of Doctor Strange. And it's always awesome when Doctor Strange shows up. I love Doctor Strange. And so we get a battle between Dracula and Thor, which only lasts more than a second because, you know, Dracula has the blood of a goddess flowing through him. Otherwise, he wouldn't last long at all with Thor. So that was it. That was... This epic collection finally ended. It took me a long time to finish this, mostly because it was just not great. But then... Now, I don't have these... I don't have these comics in physical form, but I've been reading them on the tablet. Finally, I get to Walt Simonson's Thor. Bada boom! And here we have Beta Ray Bill. If you know anything about this run of Thor, you know about Beta Ray Bill, the alien from outer space who is worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer and becomes an alien version of Thor. It's amazing. It's great. And the artwork is just fantastic. The story is incredible. It's just... I mean, it's just so wonderful. It's just wonderful stuff. So I've been waiting and waiting and waiting to finally read Walt Simonson's Thor. And I'm finally reading this. Unfortunately, like I said, I only have this stuff on the tablet because I got rid of my paperbacks because I ordered the brand new printing of the Walt Simonson Omnibus, which was delayed, and now it's coming out in July. I'm not going to wait until July to read Walt Simonson's Thor because this is the point where I'm finally at. So I'm reading the electronic versions of the paperback collections that I did have, and I'm tearing through it. I don't think Walt Simonson's Thor will last long with me just because it's so fantastic. I'm having such a good time reading it. I've read like 4 or 5 issues or whatever it was today on the tablet. His run on Thor, so good. Of course, they do not have epic collections of this period on Thor because it's been reprinted so many other places. Marvel wants to sell all those books. So they're going to wait. They're going to wait until the very end to publish Walt Simonson's Thor in epic collections, unfortunately. Such great stuff, though. And it's so much, just so much better than what came before. It's just night and day. It really makes you see just how bad the stuff in here is by comparison. Walt Simonson, man, the best. So I'm reading Walt Simonson's Thor, and I'm going to be reading Walt Simonson's Thor for a while. We'll see how long it takes me. I have a feeling I'm going to tear through it because it's pretty great. So that's what I've been reading. I got a couple things in the mail, though. I did show a package yesterday that I got in the mail. And a couple weeks ago, I got this, but I forgot to show it on my weekend reading report for some reason. But this is Daredevil Epic Collection Volume 7. Has Daredevil stories from 1976 to 1978. These are the last issues before Frank Miller starts doing some work on Daredevil and then he takes over Daredevil. Again, this is a very famous run that they probably will wait a long time to print in Epic collections. Fortunately, I do have the omnibus of Frank Miller's Daredevil. I have all of Frank Miller's Daredevil in one form or another. So that's cool. So I got this, and I was very happy to get it. Always happy to get Epic collections from the major characters that I like so much. I also got a surprise, though, in the mail that I must have pre-ordered. I just don't remember pre-ordering it or when I could have ordered it. But I got this. This is Superman Action Comics, which is, I guess this is the new run of Superman. He came back from wherever he was. And they didn't restart this with the number 1 because it's Action Comics. So this has Action Comics 1051 to 1056. So 5 issues of Action Comics. 1051 to 1056. Man, that's an impressive number. Action Comics, man, they've had a lot of them. So Superman and Action Comics, wasn't expecting this, but here it is. Here it is. And, you know, it looks all right. It looks all right. We'll see when I finally get to reading it. But I don't remember ordering this, so I don't know why I got it. But I got it. I got it. And I think that's it. I think that's it. And I'm out of coffee. So catch me tomorrow. I should have something up here tomorrow. I don't know where I'll be filming it because I am going up to the Rustic Fawn Lodge tomorrow. Roger, I'm leaving you behind. Now, the last time I did that, things turned out badly. My valet, Wilkins, disappeared for days. He finally showed up in a bizarre condition where he can no longer do his job when the sun is up. It's a weird thing, but now he can only work during the nighttime hours and the early morning before the sun rises. And then he just has to get away and go to sleep. It's very weird. He doesn't look great either. He's very pale. It's strange. So every time I leave Roger behind, something goes horribly wrong. I have dismissed the rest of the staff for the next few days, just so I don't come home to a horrible mess. We will see how it goes. We will see how it goes. And I will catch you next time.